Hey everyone, John P. here. Today we are going to be talking about some watch brands that in 2023 you should absolutely not purchase at retail price. Now, of course, you're obviously more than welcome to make your own decision, make your own choices on where you shop for watches, the watches you do shop for or put in your collection, as well as the price you pay. But I don't get it. Why would you want to pay a higher price if you don't have to? Now, over the last couple of years, most brands, reputable brands in the watch space, have really tightened up their distribution, done different things in the supply chain, like hold back supply, cut out the authorized dealers that were dumping inventory, and so many other tactics, which if you follow this channel, I'm sure you know about because I've been talking about these things for years. But there are still some brands that really haven't caught on to this trend, or maybe it's not even what they're trying to do. Maybe they're taking advantage of a different business strategy and they do want to pump and dump. So we're going to talk about 5 brands that you're best off today in 2023 buying at a steep discount. And of course, where can you go to find watches at the best prices, or at least aim to be the best price? It's going to be delraywatch.com, where we buy, sell, trade. And it's also where obviously so many of you have dealt with us and Federico, my business partner at Delray Watch, but also we see the trends on when people go to trade in these watches, what the market prices are, and that's what allows me to have this insight that I'm very excited to share with you. Now, on the wrist today, I actually have a very special watch. This is the Aventurine Delray watch, which actually we sold a couple of weeks ago. We made a very small quantity. I talked about it on this channel as well, and Federico talked about it, and it sold out the same day. So whoever got it, I'm very, obviously thank you for purchasing the watch, but I'm sure you're enjoying it. And there was just such an overwhelming demand. We're not going to make this watch again in the future because we said we wouldn't. But if there is any maybe type of watch that you'd like us to release in the future and make with you or for you, please leave that in the comments below. I'd love to see it and hear it. So the first brand that you should not buy at retail in the year 2023 is going to be Frederick Constant. Now, this is going to be a bit of a newer brand to the list here. And generally when you have newer watch brands, right, this is going to be a watch brand that is only a handful of decades old, but it's become a lot more notable over the last 5 years with different models like the High Life and their manufacturer movements, them producing their own movements for their watches, whereas they started using off-the-shelf movements from the likes of ETA and so forth. And so the reality is with Frederick Constant, they really haven't built enough of a name for themselves for people to not Google around a bit first. And the reality is, if you Google around a bit first, you can find so many closeout websites selling these watches at steep discounts. So maybe they're not, maybe not the most indesirable or the most desirable watches from the brand, but nonetheless, if you hunt around and you shop or you go pre-owned, you can get Frederick Constant at such a steep discount. In the manufacturer warranty on this one, or the authenticity papers of the warranty card, depending on how the brand calls it, really just don't add enough extra value to this watch to go and pay really a premium to buy this watch retail. So Frederick Constant is the first one. Now that takes us into Tiso. Yes, I said it. Now Tiso has been really upping the quality of their watches to be kind of where they were when they were actually a competitive Swiss brand. But there was a couple of decades here, or maybe even 15 years, where they just became that kind of, punch low Swatch Group brand where it's like, yeah, it's a Swiss watch, but they didn't put a lot of effort into it. Now, Tiso has technically their own movements. Yeah, sure, based off of other movements in the Swatch Group, like the Powermatic, but Tiso's done a lot of things, and they've brought back the PRX, which is just a hot design today. But the reality is you can get the Tiso PRX at 35% off. You can go around on the internet, or you go to Delray Watch, or go anywhere else, or even go to a Tiso authorized dealer. And if it's not in a major city and they don't have this influx of just customers all day wanting to get the latest watch, yeah, you can get 35%, maybe 30% if, they hadn't had lunch yet that day. So I wouldn't do it. Still good watches, especially at the price point, but why pay retail if you don't have to? A lot of bang for buck. I would take a look at Tiso, but only if you can get yourself a discount. Now next we have Oris. Now Oris, fan favorite, I know it. I'll see it in the comments below. Watch collectors love Oris. Oris really has captivated the minds and the hearts and the watch boxes of collectors over the last 5 years. They've done quirky, fun, cool things. They have the little bear caricature that they put on watches for kind of representing the city of Holstein where it was founded. They do some cool things like that, right? And then they had the whole Kermit, Sesame Street, or Jim Henson, I think is the creator of that. They put Kermit on this watch. I think we actually have one of these in stock. But I could tell you by how much we paid for it, and also the fact that it's not selling, and we're selling literally everything else. The watch market is kind of back in full swing, not fetching ultra premiums for the blue chip watches, but regardless, this watch doesn't seem to be getting very many inquiries. And I have to be honest with you, when I looked at the number, we paid very low for it and we priced it accordingly to the market. And so when you see something like that, that's a telltale sign, you have a hot watch like this with a kind of a hot partnership that stirred up a lot of buzz, and it doesn't have that kind of demand, which tells me, and which is what I'm telling you, you need to buy Oris watches at a good price. Shop around, hunt around, do your research, but I wouldn't walk in and pay retail, especially if you're not the kind of collector that keeps your watches forever. Now, this next one is no surprise, and I'm not against the brand. I've said things about this brand in the past, but they're stuck in a hard place, and the Richemont Group has other bigger fish to fry, I think, probably, and the reality is, if you look at the Richemont investor reports, they're printing money. So they don't need Panerai to perform that well. They bought it a long time ago. I'm sure they've already paid off. However, they bought this company in the first place. So Panerai, they're stuck in a rut. And if you go on Chrono24 right now, you can buy Panerai watches for like $3,000 on Chrono24. And I can tell you that when any dealer is buying a Panerai watch today, with the exception of watches that are kind of just come out that maybe someone would really like, or maybe they're unworn, Panerai watches have seen better days across the boards in all regards. Now, I'm very excited to see what Panerai does in the future. I think the Quaranta line that's come out is something interesting, but I'm still not going to pay retail. And there are some kind of pictures floating around out there of it's almost a conspiracy or something like that, right? This is could be a Photoshop, but there's some photos showing of some Panerai that look a lot like maybe some earlier Panerai comp swimmers, even with this additional tide/moon phase, I believe, at the 6 o'clock. If that happens, yeah, it shows that maybe Panerai's coming back with watches that people want. But for now, it's a watch that's not super high demand, or at least the brand, and I would not buy these watches at retail. Let me know what you think. Panerai watches, comments below. And by the way, I'm not saying anything about the quality of them. It's on par with Richemont Group in the price, but just don't pay retail. Do yourself a favor. Lastly, we have a brand that has really been pushed by the wayside, and I think it has an identity problem for sure. This is going to be Baume Mercier, or Baume & Mercier. This was a watch brand that 50 years ago, 60 years ago was so well respected before the times that all these brands were owned by the same companies and you had all these micro brands. Before the market changed and become more of just widgets and trinkets, and let's be honest, watches, I love them, but to a lot of people, they're toys, right? People aren't really relying on them for their life and their utility value as much anymore, and certainly the price points say that, right? Because if it costs $6,000 to tell the time, people wouldn't know what time it is, so it doesn't. But Baume & Mercier has an identity problem. They've kept raising the prices. They have some interesting movements like the Baumatic, where you have a 120-hour power reserve, but then when you look at some of the literature, they explain it in a way of, hey, the power reserve will last the whole weekend for when you put your watch down. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's the way they describe the Baumatic movement with the 120-hour power reserve, is that people were somehow complaining that they took their watch off on Friday after work, and then Monday morning they put it back on their wrist, and then they're like, hey, the movement's dead. That's how they were describing it. So it kind of seems like Baume & Mercier, for a period of time when other watches and brands were being focused on, they kind of just let interns kind of run the brand and come up with it and see what they could do, right? Let's try to make it the young and edgy brand and let some younger people run it, and let's see what they learned in school. That's kind of the impression that I get about it, and you see it in the design cues. Look at the Riviera that they just came out with. A lot of translucent materials and these colors, and it's young, and that's what the imagery, a lot of what the Baume & Mercier imagery looks like today. So that's my ramble on that. But because of all these things, it's a brand that you can get a steep discount on. You don't have to try very hard. And there could be some bang for buck there. So like the others, I would not recommend paying retail, but if you don't care about money, pay retail. If you want to keep your watches forever, I guess it doesn't matter, because what's a few cents per day over 50 years, right? So barring those exceptions, do not pay retail for these watch brands today, and you will thank me in the future. Guys, that's it for today. Please don't forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I appreciate it. You can go to Delray Watch to find so many cool watches that we have been working around the clock to bring for you and to you. And also, do not forget to leave in the comments below things you'd like to see in the future. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.